And it's really unusual. Usually I don't read from my books at all. That's from another really humiliating experience. In a country library in Australia, a place called Wodonga, I was reading my book in a library. There was a small child playing at my feet on one of those boxes that has a rattle. It has a thing that makes like a rice crackly noise. And I'm reading, doing my reading. A lady came up to me afterwards and she said, "I really like your books, but your reading is atrocious." And so I've never really read publicly since then. And that's what I'm going to read to you now. Now, I didn't expect to do this, and I didn't expect to read from The Book Thief. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do. And I'm not going to read a part that I would normally expect to read, and I even have to try to find it. This will be embarrassing if I can't find it. Let's see if I can do it. All right, I wonder if I can get through nearly 3 pages. And can I just ask how we're going for time? I don't have a watch. Because I want to make sure. Plenty of time? Okay. This is a chapter right near the end of the book, and Liesel's telling Rudy, who's just figured out that something hasn't been quite right with Liesel all along, and that she's been hiding it. I mean, not something wrong with her, but that she's been hiding a young Jewish man in her basement, and she's telling him about it. And so it's a chapter called Confessions. Sorry, I don't know what page it's in the American version. Okay, so this is how it goes. I have to warn you as well. I read this is the first reading I ever did from this book was this chapter, and I did it at a writers' festival not that long after the book came out, and it was really embarrassing because I kind of broke down, and that was when I realised what the book meant to me. So this is how it goes. Don't bag me about it afterwards either. if it's bad, don't tell me. All right. When the Jews were gone, Rudy and Liesel untangled, and the book thief did not speak. There were no answers to Rudy's questions. Liesel didn't go home either. She walked forlornly to the train station and waited for her papa for hours. At first Rudy stood with her, but since it was a good half day till Hans was due home, he fetched Rosa. On the way back he told her what had happened, and when Rosa arrived, she asked nothing of the girl. She had already assembled the puzzle and merely stood beside her and eventually convinced her to sit down. They waited together. When Papa found out he dropped his bag, he kicked the Bahnhof air. None of them ate that night. Papa's fingers desecrated the accordion, murdering song after song. No matter how hard he tried, everything no longer worked. For 3 days, the book thief stayed in bed. Every morning and afternoon, Rudy Steiner knocked on the door and asked if she was still sick. The girl was not sick. On the 4th day, Liesel walked to her neighbour's front door and asked if he might go to the trees with her, where they distributed the bread the previous year. "I should have told you earlier," she said. As promised, they walked far down the road to Dachau. They stood in the trees. There were long shapes of light and shade. Pine cones were scattered like biscuits. "Thank you, Rudy, for everything, for helping me off the road, for stopping me." She said none of that. Her hand leaned on a flaking branch at her side. "Rudy, if I tell you something, will you promise not to say a word to anyone?" "Of course." He could sense the seriousness in the girl's face and the heaviness in her voice. He leaned on the tree next to hers. "What is it?" "Promise." "I did already." "Do it again. You can't tell your mother, your brother, or Tommy Muller, nobody." "I promise." Leaning, looking at the ground, she attempted several times to find the right place to start, reading sentences at her feet, joining words to the pine cones and the scraps of broken branches. "Remember when I was injured playing football," she said, "out on the street? It took approximately 3/4 of an hour to explain 2 wars, an accordion, a Jewish fist fighter and a basement. Not forgetting what had happened just days earlier on Munich Street. That's why you went for a closer look," Rudy said, "with the bread that day, to see if he was there." "Yes." "Oh, crucified Christ." "Yes." The trees were tall and triangular, they were quiet. Liesel pulled the word shaker from her bag and showed Rudy one of the pages. On it was a boy with 3 medals hanging around his throat. Hair the colour of lemons, Rudy read. His fingers touched the words. He told him about me? At first Liesel could not talk. Perhaps it was the sudden bumpiness of love she felt for him, or had she always loved him? It's likely. Restricted as she was from speaking, She wanted him to kiss her. She wanted him to drag her hand and pull her over. It didn't matter where, her mouth, her neck, her cheek, her skin was empty for it, waiting. Years ago, when they'd raced on a muddy field, Rudy was a hastily assembled set of bones with a jagged, rocky smile. In the trees this afternoon, he was a giver of bread and teddy bears. He was a triple Hitler Youth athletics champion. He was her best friend, and he was a month from his death. Of course I told him about you, Liesl said. She was saying goodbye. She didn't even know it. I just wanted to say, it probably started out a little rough, and then I couldn't read the words at the end very well because I was getting a bit emotional. All right, and I don't know, I think it's when you talk to a group like this as well. If I was reading this to, you know, a group that's not so receptive and so on my side, I mean, I wouldn't have even read that. And so to share something that I wouldn't normally read with a group like you is really special to me. So thanks very much. The last thing I'll say before we have questions and things like that, because probably around that time I've probably gone on long enough for a bit for now. But I just want to say it took me, with flight delays and everything, my first stop in America, it took me about 36 hours to get there. And everywhere I looked, and it'd be the same if you've travelled recently by plane, everyone's plugged into something. And to see people sitting here with books in their lap, it's made, not that it wouldn't have been worth it anyway, but it's made this even more worth it. So thanks very much.